It's difficult to make predictions, especially about the future, so said Niels Bohr, and I'm not sure he or indeed anyone could have predicted the post-election drama of this year's presidential race. The question is, how unexpected were the results themselves? Let's find out. Welcome to Spolitics. So, after the most controversial election in recent memory, we finally have a clear picture of how the states voted a little over 3 weeks ago. Joe Biden will become the 46th President of the United States of America in January next year. The currently unsubstantiated claims by President Trump of widespread electoral fraud will be covered in a subsequent video. However, we're not expecting a change in any results, and neither should you. So what is clear is who won in each presidential race, which gives us an election map which looks like this. For those of you who watched our live coverage on the night of the election, you'll know that the Spolitics forecast looked like this, with Biden predicted to take home 351 votes in the Electoral College. So what went wrong? The Spolitics model called 3 races incorrectly: Florida, North Carolina, and Maine's 2nd District. We'll look at those latter two first. North Carolina and Maine too. Both of these races were races that Barack Obama had won at least once in his presidential runs, and it was thought that Biden, being seen as a strong ally of Obama, in many ways the Obama continuity candidate, this would be a strong factor in what we felt would be a Biden victory. It does appear that this was the case, with Biden outperforming Hillary Clinton in both areas. However, this wasn't as strong an effect as we had supposed within our model. Secondly, both races were affected by the senatorial races also taking place in those states. Voters who vote for a particular senatorial candidate are also much more likely to vote for the presidential candidate of the same party. The Senate races in Maine and North Carolina were both incorrectly called by the forecast as well. In Maine, incumbent Republican Susan Collins significantly outperformed many forecasts, including ours, and whilst Spolitics felt it would be a tighter race than many of these forecasts predicted, it was nevertheless a significantly surprising result that she actually won. Senator Collins is on the more moderate edge of the GOP, being one of the few pro-choice, pro-abortion rights Republican senators, and with a strong voting history on action on climate change. And despite her recent appalling approval ratings, she was the only GOP senator to vote against the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. It is possible that this, along with her other more moderate views, were seen as the more acceptable side of the GOP, which may have reduced the appeal of her Democratic challengers, particularly for the rural, white GOP voters such as those making up the majority of Maine's 2nd District. In North Carolina, Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham lost by less than a percentage point, despite leading by well over 5 points for much of the year leading up to the election. We feel that the most important factor in this loss was the revelation in October that Cunningham was engaged in an extramarital affair. Part of the model for the North Carolina forecast was that the strongly evangelical community, making up over 30% of North Carolina, were feeling increasingly comfortable with President Trump's behaviour, which would result in a small swing to Biden. Cunningham's affair seems to have reduced this factor by far more than we expected, which cost him the senatorial race and acted as a significant drag on Biden's chances in the state. Going forward, Spolitics will increase the weighting given to senatorial race influence on presidential forecasts. Although both of these races were among the hardest to call and hardest to forecast definitively, we should have done better. And finally, on to Florida. Florida remains the biggest error on our part of the evening. Trump's victory there was the biggest upset of the night when it comes to our forecast, and indeed many others. We let you down on this, and those of you who joined me on the night of the forecast will probably know why. The primary cause for the polling errors in Florida, and similarly our own forecast, was a systematic flaw in these polls. The phrase Latino vote has been around for decades now and has been used in many ways like the phrase African American vote. What 2020 showed beyond all doubt is that whilst the African American vote is still a valid concept to consider, the Latino vote is not. Treating all Americans of Latin American heritage as a singular entity is at best lazy and at worst verging on racist. Where this had the greatest impact was in Florida, which was won on the basis of primarily the Cuban American vote there. Unlike the broader Latino vote, the Cuban-American vote has been solidly Republican for some time now, and in particular pro-Trump as a result of his perceived strong leadership and vocal stance against the regimes in Cuba and Venezuela. This is in contrast to, for example, the Puerto Rican vote in Florida, of which nearly 90% voted for Biden. However, due to the Cuban-American concentration in Florida, particularly in urban areas such as Miami-Dade County, this oversight dramatically affected both the polling and the forecast itself. African Americans broadly share a common heritage, history and culture, and so the justification for using this as a useful category when it comes to forecasting is much clearer. Far less of a justification exists for the Latino vote, or even more so, the Asian American vote. Whilst the misappropriation of the Asian American vote didn't result in any dramatic changes to the results in any of the races in this election, this is something that we will be factoring in and accounting for in future forecasts. This is by far the biggest and most obvious error in our model, and had we identified this sooner, it is unlikely that we would have called Florida for Biden. And for that, we truly apologise. We let you down and you deserve better, and we will do better. So the 2020 election is over, but the Senate is still up for grabs, with both Georgia seats going to a January 5th runoff, and Democrats needing wins in both of these races to take control of the Senate for the first time in 6 years. Spoilitics will be covering both these races in depth, so please subscribe to this channel and click the bell to be notified of future updates. You've been watching Spoilitics, I've been Rory Sparshot, and until next time, goodbye. That'll do.